Hi, my name is Derek. I'm standing in my driveway right now, staring at an empty spot where a brand new BMW used to sit. Not my BMW. I never drove it. Never even sat in the driver's seat. But I paid for it. Every single payment for 6 months while my wife told me it was a work lease. Turns out the only work involved was her working me over while she bought her boyfriend his dream car with my credit. I stayed quiet. I watched. I documented everything. And when the repo man showed up this morning, I had the best seat in the house with a cup of coffee and a smile she'll never forget. This isn't just about a car. It's about what happens when a man stops being blind and starts being strategic. Stay with me, because what you're about to hear might sound familiar. It might even be your story too. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow, I've saved something extra special for you. I hadn't been home in 3 weeks. Construction management doesn't stop just because you're tired, and the Denver project had us working double shifts to meet the deadline before winter hit. 14-hour days in steel-toed boots, hard hat, and a reflective vest that made me look like a crossing guard on steroids. My back ached, my hands were calloused, and all I wanted was to collapse on my own couch, eat something that didn't come from a food truck, and sleep for about 16 hours straight. The flight from Denver back to Phoenix landed just after 9 in the morning. I grabbed my duffel from the overhead bin, nodded to the flight attendant who'd brought me 3 cups of bad coffee during the turbulence over the Rockies, and made my way through the terminal. Sky Harbor Airport was packed as always, families hauling oversized luggage, businessmen shouting into their phones, that one guy in cowboy boots who somehow appears at every Arizona airport like he's part of the decor. I texted Vanessa from the rideshare pickup area. Home in 20. Want me to grab breakfast? 3 dots appeared, then disappeared. Then nothing. I figured she was in the shower or maybe already at her Pilates class. She'd gotten really into fitness over the past few months, always talking about core strength and flexibility, and some instructor named Ramon who apparently had abs you could grate cheese on. I was happy she'd found something she enjoyed. Kept her busy while I was away. The driver was a quiet older man who didn't try to make conversation, which I appreciated. I watched the desert landscape roll by, the saguaro cacti standing like sentries in the morning sun, the mountains in the distance still holding patches of snow on their peaks. Phoenix always looked cleanest in the morning before the heat turned everything hazy and bleached. Our neighborhood sat in North Scottsdale, one of those planned communities with names like Desert Willow Estates or Sunset Canyon Ridge. Ours was called Copper Springs, which was ironic because there were no springs and the only copper came from the decorative accents the HOA mandated on every mailbox. But the houses were nice, the streets were quiet, and the schools were good, which mattered even though Vanessa and I didn't have kids yet. She always said we needed to establish ourselves first, build up savings, make sure we were ready. I agreed. I was 34. She was 31. We had time. The driver pulled up in front of our house, a single-story ranch style with desert landscaping and a 2-car garage. The garage door was closed, which meant Vanessa was probably still home. I thanked the driver, grabbed my bag, and walked up the stone pathway that we'd paid way too much to have installed 2 summers ago. I used my key. The deadbolt turned smoothly. The house was quiet inside, that particular kind of stillness that feels intentional. The air conditioning hummed softly. I could smell coffee, which meant she'd been up for a while. I set my duffel down by the door and walked through the entryway into the open-concept living room. The first thing I noticed was the mail scattered across the kitchen island. Normally Vanessa kept everything organized, filed away, dealt with immediately. She used to joke that clutter gave her hives. But here were envelopes, some opened, some not, spread out like someone had been searching for something specific and given up halfway through. I walked closer. Credit card statements. 3 of them. All addressed to me. I picked up the first one, from Chase. The balance made my stomach drop. $22,000. I paid this card off completely 6 months ago. We'd celebrated with steaks and a bottle of wine that cost more than it should have. I grabbed the second statement. Capital One. 18,000. The third one, American Express. 15,000. My hands started shaking. I sat down hard on one of the bar stools, the metal cold even through my jeans. $55,000 in debt across 3 cards I thought were paid off or barely used. I flipped through the charges. Restaurants I'd never been to. Shopping sprees at stores I couldn't afford. A charge for $6,000 labeled simply as Auto Finance Solutions. I heard water running. The master bathroom. She was home. I stood up, legs feeling unsteady, and walked down the hallway. The bedroom door was half open. I pushed it wider. Vanessa stood in front of the mirror, wearing a silk robe I'd bought her for our anniversary last year. Her dark hair was pulled up in a messy bun. She was applying mascara with the precision of a surgeon. She didn't notice me at first. When she finally glanced over and saw me standing in the doorway, she jumped slightly, hand going to her chest. "Derek," she said, eyes wide. "You scared me. I thought you weren't coming back until tomorrow." "Change of plans," I said. My voice sounded flat even to my own ears. "Finished early." She turned back to the mirror, continued with her makeup. "That's great. I'm just heading out for a bit. Lunch with the girls." I watched her. Really looked at her. New earrings, diamond studs I'd never seen before. A bracelet on her left wrist that caught the light. Designer jeans that probably cost more than my work boots. "Found some interesting mail," I said. Her hand paused for just a fraction of a second. Then continued. "Oh yeah? Anything important?" "Credit card statements. 3 of them." She set down the mascara and turned to face me, expression shifting into something that looked like concern but felt rehearsed. "Derek, I've been meaning to talk to you about that. Things have been tight while you've been gone. I had to use the cards for household expenses." $55,000 in household expenses? Her jaw tightened. "It's not just groceries, Derek. It's maintenance, repairs, the HOA fees went up, I had to replace the water heater, the landscaping needed work. There's a $6,000 charge to an auto finance company." Silence. She looked away, fussed with her hair. "That's for my car." "Your car is paid off." I needed something more reliable. The Lexus was having issues. "You bought a new car without telling me?" "It's a lease," she said quickly. "For work. I need to look professional." "You work remotely as a social media consultant." "Exactly. I meet clients. I need to make impressions." I felt something cold settle in my chest. It wasn't anger yet. It was something closer to clarity. "Show me the car." "What?" "Show me this lease car you need for work." She grabbed her phone from the counter, fingers moving fast. "I don't have time for this right now. I'm already late." "Vanessa," I said quietly. "Show me the car." She stared at me, something shifting behind her eyes. Then she grabbed her purse and pushed past me. "It's in the garage. Happy?" I followed her through the house. She hit the garage door opener with more force than necessary. The door rolled up with its familiar grinding sound. The garage was empty except for my truck, a dusty Ford F-150 that I'd driven since college. "Where's the car?" I asked. She didn't answer. Just stood there, arms crossed, staring at the empty concrete. "Vanessa, where's the car you've been making $6,000 payments on?" "I let someone borrow it," she said finally. "Who?" "A friend." "What friend?" "Does it matter?" "When I'm paying for it, yeah, it matters." She spun around, and there it was. The mask slipping. "You're always gone, Derek. You leave me here alone for weeks at a time. Do you know how lonely that is? How isolating. So you bought a car?" I needed help. Support. Someone who actually gives a damn. My breath caught. Who's driving the car, Vanessa? She looked away. Who? His name is Tyler, she whispered. The name hung in the air like smoke. I waited for her to continue. She didn't. Your boyfriend, I said. Not a question. She flinched. It's not like that. Then what's it like? It's complicated. I nodded slowly. How long? Derek, please. How long have you been seeing him? 4 months. 4 months. I'd been in Denver for 3 weeks. Before that, Austin for 2. Before that, Seattle for 10 days. She'd been faithful for 8 years of marriage, or so I'd thought. Now I was doing math I didn't want to do. And the car, I said. You bought him a car with my credit. It's a lease, she said again, like that made it better. Using cards in my name. Running up $55,000 in debt. I was going to tell you. When? When the time was right. The time is never right for this, Vanessa. She started crying. Real tears or performance, I couldn't tell anymore. You don't understand. You're never here. I needed someone. He makes me feel seen. I felt nothing. That was the strangest part. I thought I'd be furious, throwing things, shouting. Instead, I just felt empty. Like someone had scooped out my insides and left a shell standing in the garage. Where is he? I asked. What? Tyler. Where is he right now? She wiped her eyes, smearing mascara. I don't know. Why? Because I want to meet the man I've been financing. Derek, don't. Does he know? I asked. Does he know the car he's driving is paid for with cards in my name? She said nothing. Does he think you bought it? Or does he know you stole from me to give him exactly what he wanted? I didn't steal. What do you call it? She grabbed her purse again, headed for the door that led back into the house. I'm leaving. We can talk about this later when you've calmed down. I'm perfectly calm. She paused, looked back at me. That's what scares me. Then she was gone. I heard her footsteps through the house, the front door opening and closing. A car engine starting. Not a car I recognized. I walked around to the front window and watched a silver Mercedes pull away from the curb 2 houses down. She'd parked there. Planned her exit. Known this conversation was coming eventually. I stood in the garage for a long time after she left. The space felt bigger without her car in it. I could see oil stains on the concrete where her Lexus used to sit. She told me she sold it privately, got a good deal, put the money toward home improvements. I'd believed her. Why wouldn't I? She was my wife. I walked back inside, grabbed my laptop from my bag, and sat down at the kitchen table. I logged into our bank accounts. Our joint checking was nearly empty. She'd been moving money out in small increments, probably hoping I wouldn't notice. 200 here, 300 there. Death by 1,000 cuts. I checked our savings. The emergency fund we'd built up over 8 years. Gone. All $40,000. Transferred out 2 weeks ago. I opened the credit card accounts online. Scrolled through the charges going back 6 months. The pattern was clear once I knew what to look for. Expensive dinners at restaurants in Tempe. Hotels in Sedona. A weekend trip to San Diego. Charges at a men's clothing store I'd never heard of. A payment to a luxury car dealership. I screenshotted everything. Every statement, every transaction, every receipt. I created a folder on my desktop labeled Home Projects and saved it all there. Then I backed it up to the cloud. My phone buzzed. A text from Vanessa. I'm sorry. I never meant for it to happen this way. We need to talk. Really talk. I didn't respond. Instead, I opened a new browser tab and searched for divorce attorneys in Phoenix. I found one with good reviews, a woman named Patricia Caldwell who specialized in high-asset divorces and fraud cases. I sent her an email with the subject line, "Consultation request urgent." Then I did something I probably shouldn't have. I opened Facebook. I hadn't checked it in months. I typed in Vanessa's name, clicked on her profile. It was set to private, but I could see her profile picture. Her and a man I didn't recognize, sitting on a restaurant patio, his arm around her shoulders. Both of them smiling like they'd just won the lottery. I clicked on his profile. Tyler Richardson. 28 years old. Personal trainer. Lived in Tempe. Relationship status, it's complicated. His profile was public, and I scrolled through his photos. There was Vanessa again, at a concert. At the beach. In front of a shiny black BMW with a red bow on the hood. The caption read, "Dreams do come true when you have the right woman by your side." Posted 4 months ago. The same time Vanessa said it started. I took screenshots of those too. Added them to my folder. My phone rang. Patricia Caldwell's office. I answered. A paralegal named Jennifer asked me some basic questions. Was I certain I wanted to pursue divorce? Yes. Was there infidelity involved? Yes. Were there shared assets? Yes. Debt? More than I'd realized. She scheduled me for a consultation the next morning. 9 a.m. I thanked her and hung up. I sat in the quiet house and realized I didn't feel sad. I felt betrayed, sure. Angry, definitely. But underneath it all was something else. Relief. Like a weight I didn't know I was carrying had finally been set down. I thought about calling someone. My brother, maybe. Or my best friend Marcus, who'd warned me about getting married too young, about not really knowing someone until you lived with them for years. But I didn't want to hear "I told you so," even if it was deserved. Instead, I opened my email and sent a message to my project manager in Denver. Family emergency. Need to take personal leave. Will keep you updated. He responded within 10 minutes. Take all the time you need. Family first. If he only knew. I spent the rest of the day documenting everything. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel, it means a lot to us. Now back to the story. I photographed the credit card statements spread across the island. I logged into our cell phone account and downloaded 6 months of call records. Vanessa had been texting Tyler hundreds of times a day. I didn't read the messages. I didn't need to. The volume told me everything. I found the insurance paperwork for the Lexus she claimed to have sold. Called the company. The car was still insured under her name, but the policy had been changed 3 months ago. The vehicle listed was now a BMW 340i. Black. Leased through Auto Finance Solutions. I called Auto Finance Solutions. Pretended to be following up on a payment. The woman who answered was friendly, professional. She pulled up the account under Vanessa's name. The car was leased under a 3-year agreement. $640 a month. I'd been making those payments through the credit card without knowing what they were for. Is there a cosigner on the account? I asked. Let me check. A pause. No, sir. Just Mrs. Richardson. Richardson. She'd used Tyler's last name. Thank you, I said and hung up before she could ask anything else. I sat back, staring at my notes. Vanessa had been planning this. Not just an affair, but a whole separate life. She'd taken my money, my credit, my trust, and built a fantasy world where she was someone else's wife. The sun was setting, painting the living room walls orange and purple. I hadn't eaten all day, but I wasn't hungry. I walked to the refrigerator more out of habit than need. Inside was a bottle of champagne I'd bought for our anniversary next month. I took it out, looked at the label. Dom Perignon. $200 I'd saved up for because Vanessa liked the finer things. I put it back, Closed the door. My phone buzzed again. Vanessa. Can I come home? We need to figure this out. I typed back, take your time. I'm going to need a few days to process this. The truth was I didn't need time to process. I needed time to plan. Because I'd already decided what I was going to do. I wasn't going to yell or beg or try to win her back. I was going to let her think she'd gotten away with it. Let her believe I was the hurt husband who'd eventually forgive her because I was too weak or too scared to start over. And while she thought that, I was going to systematically dismantle every lie she'd built. I opened my laptop again and created a new document. I titled it Timeline and started writing down everything I knew, everything I could prove, every date and transaction and conversation. I worked until midnight, until my eyes burned and my coffee had gone cold 3 times over. When I finally went to bed, I slept in the guest room. The sheets smelled like laundry detergent and nothing else. No perfume, no history. Just clean fabric and the hum of the air conditioning. I dreamed about repo men and empty garages and champagne I'd never drink. When I woke up the next morning, Vanessa still wasn't home. The consultation with Patricia Caldwell was scheduled for 9. I got up at 6, showered, put on the one good suit I owned. Navy blue, slightly wrinkled from being packed in my duffel, but it would do. I made coffee, scrambled some eggs I barely tasted, and reviewed my notes one more time. At 8:30, I drove to her office in downtown Phoenix. The building was glass and steel, reflecting the morning sun like a mirror. I took the elevator to the 4th floor and checked in with the receptionist, a young man with perfectly styled hair and a smile that looked genuine. Patricia met me in the lobby 5 minutes later. She was in her 50s, I guessed, with silver hair cut short and sharp eyes behind rectangular glasses. She shook my hand with a firm grip. "Derek," she said. "Come on back." Her office overlooked the city, floor-to-ceiling windows framing the skyline. She gestured to a leather chair across from her desk and I sat, suddenly aware of how out of place I felt in this world of expensive furniture and quiet competence. "Tell me everything," she said, pulling out a yellow legal pad. So I did. I told her about coming home early, finding the credit card statements, confronting Vanessa. I told her about Tyler and the BMW and the $55,000 in debt I didn't know I had. I showed her the screenshots, the bank records, the cell phone logs. She took notes without interrupting. When I finished, she set down her pen and looked at me directly. "This is going to get messy," she said. "But you have a strong case. Fraud, identity theft, financial infidelity. Arizona is a community property state, but we can argue she should bear responsibility for debt incurred without your knowledge or consent, especially debt used to benefit a third party. What are my chances? Of getting a favorable settlement? Good. Of avoiding financial ruin? That depends on how much you're willing to fight." "I'll fight," I said. She nodded. "Then here's what we're going to do." She laid out a strategy that was both elegant and brutal. First, freeze all joint accounts and credit cards. Second, file a police report for identity theft and fraud. Third, contact the credit card companies and dispute the charges I didn't authorize. Fourth, file for divorce citing adultery and financial misconduct. Fifth, and this is where it got interesting, contact the leasing company and inform them the car was obtained using fraudulent information. That last one made me pause. "You mean repossess it? If the lease was signed using credit cards in your name without your authorization, and if you report that to the leasing company along with the police report, they have grounds to reclaim the vehicle. Especially if payments stop. Vanessa will lose the car." Patricia leaned back in her chair. "She'll lose more than that. But the car is symbolic. It's visible. It's the thing Tyler will notice first. And when he realizes the gravy train has stopped, he'll disappear. Men like him always do." I thought about that. Tyler Richardson, personal trainer, 28 years old, driving a BMW he didn't pay for, sleeping with a married woman who funded his lifestyle. Patricia was right. The moment the money dried up, he'd be gone. How long will this take? I asked. The divorce? 6 months minimum in Arizona. The financial recovery? Could be years. But we start now. She pulled out a stack of forms and we spent the next 2 hours filling them out. I signed documents authorizing her to represent me, giving her access to financial records, permitting her to speak with credit companies on my behalf. She explained each one carefully, made sure I understood what I was agreeing to. When we finished, she walked me to the door. One more thing, she said. Don't communicate with your wife except through me or in writing. No phone calls, no in-person meetings. Everything documented. Understood? Understood. And Derek? She put a hand on my shoulder. I know this feels overwhelming. But you're doing the right thing. Don't let guilt or nostalgia make you second-guess yourself. I won't, I said. I left her office feeling lighter than I had in 24 hours. I had a plan. I had representation. I had proof. Now I just needed patience. I drove to the police station on McDowell Road and filed a report for identity theft and fraud. The officer who took my statement was sympathetic but warned me that cases like this rarely resulted in criminal charges when the perpetrator was a spouse. Still, the report would exist. It would be documented. That's what mattered. Next, I called each credit card company. I explained the situation, referenced the police report number, disputed every charge I hadn't personally authorized. The representatives were skeptical at first until I sent them copies of the documentation Patricia had prepared. Then their tones changed. They opened investigations. They froze the accounts. They sent me fraud affidavits to fill out. By noon, Vanessa's access to money had been cut off completely. I went home and found her sitting on the front porch. She looked smaller somehow, hunched over her phone, mascara-stained tissues balled up in her hand. When she saw me pull into the driveway, she stood up. My cards aren't working, she said. None of them. I know. Derek, what did you do? I filed a police report for fraud. Froze all the accounts. Disputed the charges. Her face went pale. You can't do that. I already did. That's our money. No, I said calmly. It's my credit. My name. And you used it to commit fraud. I'm your wife. And you've been having an affair for 4 months while stealing from me. She started crying again. Real tears this time, I thought. Desperate ones. Please, Derek. We can fix this. I'll end it with Tyler. I'll get a job. I'll pay you back. Too late. Don't say that. It's never too late. I walked past her toward the front door. She grabbed my arm. I stopped but didn't look at her. I still love you, she whispered. I pulled my arm free. You have a funny way of showing it. Inside, I packed a bag with enough clothes for a week. I grabbed my laptop, some files, my toiletries. Vanessa followed me through the house, pleading, promising, bargaining. I tuned it out. It was just noise now. Where are you going? She asked when I headed back toward the door. Hotel. I'll be in touch through my attorney. Your attorney? Derek, please. Don't do this. I stopped in the doorway and turned to face her one last time. You did this, Vanessa. Every choice that led us here was yours. I'm just dealing with the consequences. What am I supposed to do? I don't know. Call Tyler. Maybe he can help. He doesn't have any money. I know, I said. And walked out. I heard her screaming after me, voice raw and broken, but I didn't look back. I got in my truck, started the engine, and drove away from the house I'd bought, the marriage I'd believed in, the life I thought I had. I checked into a Marriott near the airport. The room was generic and anonymous. Beige walls, white sheets, a painting of desert flowers that probably came from a hotel supply catalog. It was perfect. I sat on the edge of the bed and called Patricia. "It's done," I said. "All the accounts are frozen. I filed the police report." "She's cut off." "Good. How are you holding up?" "I'm fine." "Derek, it's okay not to be fine." "I know. But I am." "Really?" There was a pause. Then she said, "The leasing company called me back. They're sending a repo agent tomorrow morning." I gave them your wife's address. "Tomorrow morning?" "Yes." "I suggest you not be there." "I won't be." After we hung up, I ordered room service. A burger and fries I barely touched. I turned on the TV but didn't watch it. Just let the noise fill the silence. I thought about Vanessa alone in that house, realizing her cards didn't work, her bank accounts were frozen, her safety net was gone. I thought about Tyler driving that BMW, unaware that in less than 24 hours it would be hooked up to a tow truck and hauled away. I should have felt guilty. Or sad. Or something. Instead, I felt nothing but a quiet, cold satisfaction. Tomorrow morning, the repo man would arrive. And I wouldn't be there to see it. But I'd arranged something better. I'd arranged to know exactly when it happened, exactly how she'd react, and exactly what would come next. Because this wasn't just about divorce or debt or betrayal. This was about consequences. And Vanessa was about to learn what those felt like. I woke up at 6 the next morning to my phone buzzing. A text from an unknown number. "This is Martinez from Southwest Towing. We're 10 minutes out from the address you provided. Just giving you a heads up." I sat up in the hotel bed, suddenly wide awake. I'd hired Martinez myself yesterday afternoon after Patricia gave me the leasing company's information. Paid him extra to send me photos and keep me updated throughout the process. He'd been skeptical at first until I explained the situation. Then he'd gotten almost enthusiastic about it. "These cases are always satisfying," he'd said over the phone. "Taking back what someone bought with stolen money. It's like being Robin Hood, except we're giving it back to the bank instead of the poor." I texted back, "Understood. Keep me posted." Then I got up, made coffee with the small machine on the desk, and waited. The Phoenix sun was already heating up the sky by 7. I stood by the window watching planes take off from the airport in the distance, their metal bodies catching the light like silver fish. My phone buzzed again. On site. Black BMW 340i in the driveway. Matches the description. Proceeding with recovery. A photo came through seconds later. There it was. The car from Tyler's Facebook post. Gleaming black paint, chrome accents, sitting in my driveway like it belonged there. Like it hadn't been purchased with fraud. I zoomed in on the photo. I could see the edge of our front door in the frame. The porch where Vanessa had been sitting yesterday. The flower pots she'd insisted we buy from that overpriced garden center because they were hand-painted by local artists. Another text, "Homeowner has come outside. Female. Very upset. Hold on." I could picture it perfectly. Vanessa in her robe, bare feet on the concrete, watching a stranger hook up the BMW to his truck. The confusion turning to panic, turning to rage. My phone rang. "Vanessa." I let it go to voicemail. It rang again. Again, I ignored it. A text came through, "Derek, what did you do then?" Another, "They're taking the CAR." And another, "Call me right now." I set my phone face down on the desk and took a sip of coffee. It was bitter and weak, typical hotel coffee, but it was hot and that's all that mattered. Martinez texted again, "Vehicle secured. Homeowner is demanding to speak with me. What do you want me to tell her?" I typed back, "Tell her to contact Auto Finance Solutions if she has questions. You're just doing your job." Copy that. 5 minutes later, another photo. The BMW loaded onto the flatbed, chains secured, ready for transport. In the background, I could see Vanessa standing in the driveway, phone pressed to her ear, gesturing wildly with her free hand. The final text from Martinez came at 7:30, "Vehicle delivered to impound lot." Invoice attached. Pleasure doing business with you. I transferred the payment immediately and added a generous tip. Then I sat down on the bed and waited for what I knew was coming next. It took 20 minutes. My phone exploded with notifications all at once. Texts from Vanessa, voicemails, missed calls. I scrolled through the texts without opening them so she wouldn't see the read receipts. You destroyed me. How could you do this? I have nothing now. Tyler is furious. You've ruined everything. I hate you. Please call me back. We can still fix this. I'm begging you. The progression from anger to desperation was almost predictable. I deleted them all without responding. Then my phone rang with a number I didn't recognize. I answered. Is this Derek Paulson? A woman's voice, professional but strained. Yes. This is Jennifer from Auto Finance Solutions. We've repossessed a vehicle that was leased under your wife's name, but we've been informed that the payments were made using credit cards that are now being disputed for fraud. Can you confirm this? I can confirm that my wife used my credit cards without authorization to lease a vehicle for her boyfriend. I've filed a police report and disputed all charges related to that lease. There was a pause. I heard typing in the background. Mr. Paulson, this puts us in a difficult position. The lease agreement was signed by your wife, but the payment method was fraudulent. We'll need to cancel the lease and pursue collection for the amount owed. That's between you and my wife. I'm no longer responsible for those payments. I've reported the fraud to the credit card companies and they're investigating. More typing. We'll be in touch with Mrs. Paulson directly then. Thank you for clarifying the situation. One more thing, I said. The vehicle is currently impounded. You'll want to retrieve it before storage fees accumulate. Understood. We appreciate the information. After she hung up, I sat back against the headboard and closed my eyes. It was done. The car was gone. Vanessa's lifeline to Tyler had been cut. Now I just had to wait and see what happened next. I didn't have to wait long. At 9 o'clock, Patricia called. We have a problem, she said. Your wife showed up at my office. What? She's in the lobby right now demanding to see you. Security won't let her up, but she's making quite a scene. I'll be right there. Derek, you don't have to come. I can handle this. I know. But I want to see her face. 20 minutes later, I walked into Patricia's building. I could hear Vanessa before I saw her. Her voice echoed through the marble lobby, shrill and desperate. He's my husband. I have a right to speak to him. You can't keep me from him. The security guard, a broad-shouldered man in his 60s, stood between her and the elevators with his arms crossed. Ma'am, I've explained this already. If you don't have an appointment, you need to leave. Vanessa spotted me across the lobby. Her face crumpled. Derek, please. Talk to me. Just 5 minutes. I walked past her without stopping. She grabbed my arm. The security guard moved forward but I held up a hand. It's fine. I looked down at her hand on my sleeve, then up at her face. She looked terrible. Hair unwashed, eyes swollen, wearing the same clothes from yesterday. No makeup. No jewelry. Just raw desperation. Let go, I said quietly. She did, stumbling back a step. Please. I know you're angry. You have every right to be. But this has gone too far. Taking the car, freezing everything, I can't even buy groceries. You should have thought of that before you spent $55,000 on your boyfriend. Her face flushed. It wasn't like that. Then what was it like, Vanessa? Explain it to me. Make me understand how you thought any of this was okay. People in the lobby were staring now. A woman with a briefcase paused by the entrance, watching. An older man near the coffee stand had his phone out, probably recording. Vanessa lowered her voice. Not here. Please, can we go somewhere private? No. Anything you have to say, you can say through your lawyer. Get one. I can't afford a lawyer. You froze everything. That's not my problem. Derek, please. Her voice broke. I made a mistake. I know that. But I'm still your wife. We took vows. You broke those vows the first time you slept with him. Every time after that, you just proved you didn't care. I do care. I love you. No, I said. You love what I provided. The house, the money, the security. You loved having someone you could use while you played house with someone else. That's not true. Then why didn't you leave? If you loved him so much, why stay married to me? She opened her mouth but no words came out. The answer was obvious to both of us. She'd wanted both lives. The stability I offered and the excitement Tyler provided. She thought she could have everything without consequences. I stepped around her toward the elevators. The security guard pressed the button for me. Vanessa's voice followed me. Tyler left. Did you know that? He left the second he found out the car was gone. Didn't even call to check if I was okay. Just blocked my number and disappeared. I stopped. Turned back. And that's my fault? She was crying now, mascara-free tears streaming down her face. I have nothing. No car, no money, no one. You took everything. I didn't take anything, I said. I just stopped giving. The elevator doors opened. I stepped inside. Patricia was waiting on the 4th floor when I arrived. That was restraint of you, she said as we walked to her office. I meant every word. I know. That's what made it effective. We spent the next hour going over the divorce paperwork. Patricia had moved fast. The petition was ready to file, citing adultery and financial misconduct. She'd included a detailed accounting of all the fraudulent charges, the police report number, documentation of the lease obtained through fraud. We're asking for full reimbursement of all funds she took from joint accounts, she explained. Plus division of assets that heavily favors you given her misconduct. The house, your truck, your retirement accounts, all of that stays with you. She gets whatever personal items she can prove she purchased with her own money. What about her lawyer fees? She can ask the court to make you pay them, but given the circumstances, it's unlikely to be granted. She made her bed. When do we file? Today if you're ready. I'm ready. Patricia gathered the documents into a folder and stood. I'll walk these over to the courthouse myself. You should expect her to be served within 48 hours. Where will they serve her? The address on file. Your house. She's probably still there. Then she'll get them today. After I left Patricia's office, I drove around Phoenix without any real destination. Past the strip malls and housing developments, through neighborhoods that all looked the same. Desert landscaping, tile roofs, beige stucco. The city sprawled endlessly under the relentless sun. I thought about Vanessa alone in that house, sitting in the wreckage of her choices. I thought about Tyler, already moved on to his next target, someone else's wife with deeper pockets. I thought about the 8 years I'd spent building a marriage that turned out to be a performance. My phone rang. My brother, James. I answered. Hey, man. You okay? You've been radio silent for days. I'm fine. Just dealing with some stuff. What kind of stuff? I told him. All of it. The credit cards, the affair, the BMW, the repo, the divorce filing. He listened without interrupting, which was unusual for James. When I finished, there was a long silence. Jesus Christ, he finally said. I'm sorry, Derek. That's brutal. It is what it is. You need anything? You want to come stay with us for a while? Michelle would love to have you. Thanks, but I'm okay in the hotel for now. I need some space to think. Just don't isolate too much. This kind of thing can mess with your head. I know. I'll be fine. Derek, seriously. Call me if you need to talk. Anytime. I will. After we hung up, I realized I was parked outside the house Vanessa and I had bought 3 years ago. I hadn't meant to drive here, but my hands had taken me on autopilot. I sat in my truck across the street, engine running, air conditioning blasting. The front yard looked the same. The porch swing moved slightly in the breeze. The decorative copper mailbox gleamed in the sun. But the driveway was empty now. Just oil stains and tire marks where the BMW used to sit. As I watched, a silver sedan pulled up. A man in khakis and a polo shirt got out, carrying a manila envelope. Process server. I'd seen enough legal shows to recognize the walk. He knocked on the front door. Waited. Knocked again. The door opened and Vanessa appeared. Even from across the street, I could see her body language change when he handed her the envelope. Her shoulders sagged. She looked down at it for a long moment, then back up at the server. He said something, gestured to a tablet. She signed. He left. Vanessa stood in the doorway holding the divorce papers. Then she slowly sank down onto the porch steps, envelope clutched in both hands, and didn't move. I put my truck in gear and drove away. That night, I got an email from the credit card companies. All 3 had completed their preliminary investigations and agreed to remove the fraudulent charges from my accounts. The $55,000 in debt would be transferred to Vanessa's name exclusively. I was no longer liable. I forwarded the email to Patricia with a simple note, "Good news." She replied immediately, "Excellent. This strengthens our position significantly. She can't claim the debt should be split if the charges were fraudulent." The next few days passed in a strange blur. I stayed at the hotel, worked remotely on my laptop, ordered room service, and watched a lot of bad television. Patricia called with updates. Vanessa had hired a lawyer, a man named Robert Chen who specialized in defending the indefensible. He'd already filed a response claiming the debt should be considered community property regardless of fraud, that Vanessa deserved spousal support, that she'd been psychologically damaged by my emotional abandonment. "It's all posturing," Patricia assured me. "He knows he doesn't have a case, but he has to try something." What happens next? We go to mediation. Try to settle without going to trial. If that doesn't work, we see a judge. When? Mediation is scheduled for 2 weeks from now. Start thinking about what you're willing to compromise on, if anything. I'm not compromising on the debt. That's all hers. Understood. What about the house? I want it. I paid for it. She can find somewhere else to live. That might be harder to justify. Arizona is community property. She committed fraud. Doesn't that change things? It can. But judges are unpredictable. Be prepared to negotiate. I spent those 2 weeks preparing. I organized every document, every receipt, every text message. I created a timeline of Vanessa's deception, color-coded and cross-referenced. I printed financial statements showing exactly where every dollar had gone. I was thorough in a way that probably bordered on obsessive, but I didn't care. This was war, and I intended to win. The morning of mediation arrived. I put on my suit, checked my notes one last time, and drove to the neutral office space Patricia had arranged. It was in a building near Camelback Mountain, glass and stone, designed to look calming and professional. Vanessa was already there when I arrived. She sat in a chair near the window, staring out at the desert landscape. She'd lost weight. Her clothes hung loose, her face looked gaunt. She didn't look at me when I walked in. Robert Chen stood and offered his hand. I shook it briefly. He was younger than I expected, maybe 40, with expensive glasses and a watch that cost more than my truck. "Thank you for coming," he said. "I think we can reach an agreement today that works for everyone." "We'll see," Patricia replied coolly. The mediator, a woman named Dr. Sarah Ortiz, walked us through the process. We'd each present our position, discuss areas of disagreement, and try to find common ground. The goal was settlement. The reality was probably going to be uglier. Robert started. My client acknowledges that mistakes were made in the marriage. However, she contends that Mr. Paulson's frequent absences and emotional unavailability created an environment where those mistakes became inevitable. She's asking for 50% of all marital assets, including the house, retirement accounts, and vehicles. She's also requesting spousal support of $3,000 per month for 5 years to allow her time to re-establish herself financially. Patricia didn't even open her folder. Absolutely not. Mr. Paulson owes your client nothing. She committed fraud, adultery, and theft. She drained their savings, ran up massive debt, and used his credit to finance her affair. We're asking that she receive 0 assets, 0 support, and full responsibility for the debt she incurred. Robert's jaw tightened. That's unconscionable. Mrs. Paulson has no income, no savings, nowhere to live. You're asking the court to make her homeless. She should have considered that before she stole $55,000. The mediator held up a hand. Let's take a step back. We're here to find solutions, not assign blame. But Patricia wasn't backing down. Dr. Ortiz, with respect, blame is relevant here. This isn't a typical divorce where 2 people grew apart. This is a case of systematic financial fraud and betrayal. My client has evidence, police reports, credit card company investigations, all supporting his position. Your mediation works when both parties negotiate in good faith. Mrs. Paulson destroyed any good faith months ago. Vanessa finally spoke, her voice small. I just want to move on with my life. Then sign the papers, I said. It was the first time I'd spoken directly to her since the lobby confrontation. Take your personal belongings and go. That's the deal. I can't survive on nothing. You'll figure it out. Like I had to figure out how to deal with $55,000 in fraudulent debt. Her lawyer leaned forward. Mr. Paulson, I understand you're hurt. But punishing my client to this degree doesn't serve anyone. It serves justice, Patricia cut in. And it prevents her from profiting from her own misconduct. We went back and forth for 3 hours. Robert tried every angle. He argued emotional distress. He claimed Vanessa deserved credit for years of homemaking even though she'd worked remotely the entire marriage. He suggested I was being vindictive and cruel. Patricia countered every point with documentation, legal precedent, and cold logic. Finally, Dr. Ortiz called for a break. Patricia and I stepped into the hallway while Vanessa and Robert stayed in the conference room. You're doing great, Patricia said. Stay firm. They're desperate. She looks terrible. That's not your problem. I know. But still. Patricia studied my face. Derek, are you having second thoughts? No. I just didn't think it would feel like this. Like what? Like I'm destroying someone. You're not destroying her. You're holding her accountable. There's a difference. I nodded, but the weight in my chest didn't lift. When we returned to the room, Robert had a new proposal. Vanessa would accept full responsibility for the debt if I gave her $20,000 to help her get back on her feet and agreed not to pursue any further legal action. Patricia looked at me. I shook my head. No deal, she told Robert. His face flushed. You're being unreasonable. We're being fair. Your client stole from mine. She doesn't get a reward for that. $20,000 is hardly a reward. It's survival money. Then she should have thought about survival before she destroyed her marriage. The mediation ended without agreement. Dr. Ortiz looked disappointed but unsurprised. We'll be scheduling a court date, she said. I'd encourage both parties to reconsider settlement before then. Trials are expensive and emotionally draining. As we gathered our things, Vanessa stood up. She walked over to me, and for a moment, I thought she might try to hug me or make some last desperate plea. Instead, she just looked at me with hollow eyes. I hope you're happy, she said quietly. I'm not, I replied. But I'm free. and that's better." She walked out with Robert trailing behind her. Patricia and I left through a different exit. "You handled that well," she said as we reached the parking lot. "Doesn't feel like it." "That's because you still have a conscience." "She doesn't." I drove back to the hotel in silence. The sun was setting, turning the sky shades of orange and purple that would have been beautiful if I'd been in the mood to notice. I ordered Chinese food that I didn't eat and watched the news without absorbing a single story. My phone buzzed around 9. A text from an unknown number. "This is Tyler. We need to talk." I stared at the message for a long moment. Then I blocked the number without responding. Whatever he wanted to say, I didn't need to hear it. The trial date was set for 6 weeks out. Patricia filed a motion for summary judgment, arguing that the evidence was so clear there was no need for a trial. The judge denied it, saying Vanessa deserved her day in court even if the outcome seemed predetermined. Those 6 weeks were the longest of my life. I went back to work, threw myself into projects, stayed late at construction sites until my body was too tired to think. My coworkers noticed the change but didn't ask questions. James called every few days to check on me. I told him I was fine, and eventually, he stopped asking if I meant it. 2 weeks before trial, Patricia called with unexpected news. Robert Chen had filed a motion to withdraw as Vanessa's attorney. "Why?" I asked. "He claims she can't pay his retainer and has been uncooperative. Reading between the lines, I think she's been lying to him and he doesn't want to be sanctioned for it." "So she doesn't have a lawyer?" "Not anymore. The judge will probably grant her a continuance to find new representation." "Which means more delays." "Probably. But it also means she's running out of options." The continuance was granted. The new trial date was set for 3 months later. Vanessa filed papers requesting a public defender, but the judge ruled that civil cases didn't qualify for appointed counsel. She'd have to represent herself or find someone willing to work pro bono. During those months, I started to rebuild. I moved out of the hotel and into a small apartment in Tempe. 1 bedroom, basic furniture, but it was mine. No shared history, no memories lurking in corners. I painted the walls a color I liked, hung pictures that meant something to me, and bought a coffee maker that made decent espresso. I started running in the mornings, something I hadn't done since college. The desert trails were brutal in the heat, but I liked the way my lungs burned, the way my legs ached. It felt like penance and purification at the same time. I even went on a few dates, though nothing serious. A woman named Claire from the gym who talked too much about her ex. A teacher named Melissa who was sweet but boring. A photographer named Angie who was interesting but emotionally unavailable. I wasn't looking for anything real, just proof that I could still connect with someone, that Vanessa hadn't broken that part of me completely. The trial finally arrived on a Tuesday in October. The courtroom was smaller than I expected, wood-paneled and formal, with fluorescent lights that made everything look slightly sickly. Patricia and I sat at one table. Vanessa sat alone at the other, a stack of papers in front of her that she'd clearly printed from some legal website. The judge was a man in his 60s named Harold Brennan. He had a reputation for being fair but impatient with people who wasted his time. He looked over his glasses at both of us and sighed. "This is a divorce proceeding with contested asset division and debt allocation. Mrs. Paulson, I see you're representing yourself. Do you understand that puts you at a significant disadvantage?" Vanessa stood. "Yes, Your Honor. I couldn't afford an attorney." "Very well. We'll proceed. Mr. Chen, you may present your case." Patricia stood and outlined everything methodically. The timeline of discovery, the credit card fraud, the affair, the police report, the lease obtained through deception. She entered 47 pieces of evidence, each one labeled and cross-referenced. She called me to the stand. "Mr. Paulson, when did you first become aware of the fraudulent charges?" "When I returned home from a work trip and found the credit card statements on the kitchen counter." "What was your immediate reaction?" "Shock. Then confusion. Then I started investigating. And what did you find? That my wife had been systematically using my credit to fund an affair and a lifestyle I knew nothing about. Patricia walked me through every detail. The discovery of Tyler, the Facebook photos, the BMW, the drained savings account. I answered each question calmly, sticking to facts, avoiding emotion. When it was Vanessa's turn to cross-examine me, she stood shakily. Derek, did you ever think about why I might have needed someone else? Patricia objected. Relevance, Your Honor. Sustained. Mrs. Paulson, stick to questions about the financial matters. She tried again. You were gone all the time. Did you expect me to just sit alone forever? Another objection. Another sustained ruling. Vanessa sat down, defeated before she'd even started. Patricia called a forensic accountant who walked through the finances in excruciating detail. Every dollar traced, every transaction explained. The picture was damning. Vanessa had been siphoning money for almost a year before I noticed, small amounts at first, then increasingly large ones. When it was Vanessa's turn to present her case, she stood and read from a prepared statement. She talked about loneliness, about feeling abandoned, about Tyler making her feel alive again. She cried, which might have been effective if the judge hadn't been looking at his notes the entire time. Mrs. Paulson, he interrupted. Do you have any evidence that contradicts the financial documentation presented by Mr. Paulson's attorney? No, Your Honor. But I think context matters. Context doesn't change the fact that you committed fraud. Do you dispute that you used your husband's credit cards without his knowledge or permission? I thought they were our cards. Were they in your name? No. Did you have written authorization to use them? We were married. I didn't think I needed it. Judge Brennan leaned back in his chair. Marriage doesn't give you carte blanche to commit fraud, Mrs. Paulson. Anything else? She had nothing. No witnesses, no evidence, no defense except the emotional plea that had already fallen flat. She sat down. The judge reviewed his notes for what felt like an eternity. Then he looked up. This is one of the clearer cases I've seen in some time. Mrs. Paulson, you systematically defrauded your husband, violated his trust, and used his financial resources to conduct an extramarital affair. There is no gray area here. Therefore, I'm ruling in favor of Mr. Paulson on all counts. He went through it point by point. I got the house, my retirement accounts, my truck. Vanessa got her personal belongings and full responsibility for the $55,000 in fraudulent debt. No spousal support. No division of assets. Clean break. This divorce is granted, Judge Brennan concluded. The marriage is dissolved. You're both free to move on with your lives, though I'd suggest you do so more responsibly than you've demonstrated here. It was over. Just like that. 8 years of marriage ended in less than 4 hours of testimony. Patricia and I stood. Vanessa remained seated, staring at the table. We walked out of the courtroom into the hallway where James was waiting. How'd it go? He asked. We won, Patricia said. Completely. James hugged me. I hugged him back, feeling nothing but exhaustion. As we headed toward the exit, I heard footsteps behind us. Vanessa's voice, desperate and raw. Derek, wait. I stopped. Turned. She looked broken standing there in the courthouse hallway, hair disheveled, makeup smeared. I'm sorry, she said. For all of it. I know that doesn't mean anything now, but I needed to say it. I looked at her for a long moment. Then I nodded once. Take care of yourself, Vanessa. And I walked away for the last time. Outside, the October sun felt warm but not oppressive. The monsoon season had passed. The air smelled clean. Patricia shook my hand and told me she'd send final paperwork within the week. James suggested we grab lunch to celebrate. I agreed, though celebration felt like the wrong word. As we drove to the restaurant, my phone buzzed. A notification from the credit monitoring service I'd signed up for months ago. Your credit score has increased by 78 points. I showed James. He laughed. That's one way to mark a fresh start. At lunch, we didn't talk about Vanessa or the trial or any of it. We talked about his kids, about upcoming holidays, about a fishing trip we'd been planning for years but never actually taken. Normal things. Brother things. When I finally got back to my apartment that evening, I sat on my balcony with a beer and watched the sunset paint the sky. I thought about the man I'd been 6 months ago, coming home early from Denver, expecting to surprise his wife, finding betrayal instead. That man would barely recognize me now. Harder, maybe. More cautious. But also clearer about what he'd accept and what he wouldn't. My phone buzzed one more time. A text from Patricia. Congratulations on your freedom. Use it wisely. I replied, I intend to. And for the first time in months, I actually believed it. 3 months after the divorce was finalized, I sold the house. I'd thought about keeping it, maintaining that piece of stability, but every room held echoes I didn't want to hear anymore. The real estate agent was a cheerful woman named Donna who kept calling it a seller's market and assured me we'd have offers within days. She was right. We had 4 offers in 72 hours. I accepted one that was $15,000 over asking, all cash, quick close. The day I handed over the keys to the new owners, a young couple with a baby on the way, I felt lighter than I had in years. They walked through talking excitedly about paint colors and where they'd put the nursery. I wished them well and meant it. I'd already found a place I actually wanted. A small house in Chandler, older construction, solid bones, with a workshop in the back that the previous owner had used for woodworking. I'd always wanted to learn, and now I had time. The neighborhood was quiet, mostly retirees and young families. Nobody knew my story. Nobody asked questions. Moving day was simple. I didn't have much. Most of the furniture from the Scottsdale house had been sold with it. I kept my truck, my tools, some books, my coffee maker. Everything else felt like it belonged to someone else's life. James helped me unload boxes, complaining good-naturedly about the Arizona heat even though it was November and barely 80 degrees. His son Marcus, my nephew, ran around the empty rooms making echo sounds and laughing when his voice bounced back. This is good, James said as we carried in the last of the boxes. Fresh start. New chapter. All the clichés, I replied, but I was smiling. Sometimes clichés are true. That night, after James and his family left, I sat on the back patio with a beer and looked at the stars. The light pollution was less here than in Scottsdale. I could actually see constellations. I pulled up an astronomy app on my phone and started identifying them. Orion. Cassiopeia. The Pleiades. Small victories, learning things I'd never made time for before. Work picked up in the new year. The construction company promoted me to senior project manager, which meant more responsibility but also more control over my schedule. I started taking on projects I actually cared about. A community center in a low-income neighborhood. A veterans housing complex. Buildings that meant something beyond profit margins. I also started teaching a construction basics class at the community college 2 nights a week. Most of my students were younger guys looking to get into the trades, but there were a few older folks making career changes, including a woman in her 50s named Ruth who'd just left an abusive marriage and was learning skills so she'd never be dependent on anyone again. Her determination reminded me why I'd started this in the first place. One evening after class, Ruth stayed behind to ask about advanced framing techniques. As we talked, she mentioned she was having trouble with her landlord refusing to fix a leaking roof. I can take a look if you want, I offered. No charge. She seemed surprised but grateful. The next Saturday, I drove over with my tools. The leak was worse than she described, a whole section of shingles missing. I spent the afternoon patching it properly, refusing payment despite her insistence. You helped me, she said finally. Now I'm helping you. That's how it works. Driving home, I realized I felt good. Not happy exactly, but purposeful. Like I was building something again, even if it was just small acts of decency. I ran into Vanessa exactly once after the divorce. It was at a grocery store in Mesa, 6 months after everything was finalized. I was grabbing coffee and eggs before heading to a job site. She was in the produce section, looking thinner than I remembered, her cart half empty. Our eyes met across the aisle. For a second, neither of us moved. Then she looked away quickly and hurried toward the checkout. I continued shopping, my hands steady, my breathing normal. She was just another stranger now. Someone I used to know. At the register, I noticed her ahead of me in line. She was counting out cash for her groceries, mostly basics. Rice, beans, generic brand everything. When her total came up short by $3, she started putting items back. The cashier looked uncomfortable. The people behind her shifted impatiently. I stepped forward and handed the cashier a $5. "This covers it." Vanessa turned, face flushing. "Derek, I don't need your charity." "It's not charity. It's $3. She stared at me, something complicated crossing her expression. Then she took her bags and left without another word. The cashier gave me my change. I pocketed it and walked out to my truck. I thought about that moment for days afterward. Not with satisfaction or vindictiveness, but with a kind of sad clarity. We'd both lost something in that marriage, but I'd gotten myself back. I wasn't sure she had. By the time summer rolled around again, I'd finished the workshop renovation. I'd installed proper lighting, organized my tools, built a solid workbench. I started with simple projects. A birdhouse. A cutting board. A small table for my patio. The work was meditative, precise, forgiving in ways relationships never were. Marcus, my nephew, came over most weekends to help. He was 12 now, curious about everything, asking endless questions about measurements and wood grain and finishing techniques. I taught him what I knew, remembering my own father doing the same for me decades ago. "You're good at this," he said one afternoon as we sanded a bookshelf we'd built together. "Practice," I told him. "And patience." "Did you always want to build things?" I thought about that. "Since I was about your age, yeah. There's something satisfying about making something real. Something you can touch. Like leaving a mark?" "Exactly like that." We worked in comfortable silence after that, the rasp of sandpaper the only sound except for birds in the yard and distant traffic. James stopped by later to pick up Marcus. He found us finishing the final coat of stain. "Looks good," he said, running his hand over the smooth wood. "You teaching him well?" "He's a natural." Marcus beamed. "We're making Mom a bookshelf for her birthday." "She'll love it," James said. Then to me, quietly while Marcus cleaned brushes, "You're doing good, Derek. Really good. Just staying busy. It's more than that. You seem settled. Peaceful." I considered that. Maybe I am. The anniversary of the divorce came and went without fanfare. I marked it only because Facebook reminded me that a year ago I'd changed my relationship status to divorced. I deleted the app the next day. I didn't need the reminders or the connections to a past I'd already processed. I started dating someone seriously for the first time since Vanessa. Her name was Lauren. She was a civil engineer I'd met on a project site, smart and straightforward with a dry sense of humor I appreciated. She knew about my divorce, the basics anyway, and didn't press for details I wasn't ready to share. Our relationship developed slowly, carefully. Dinners that turned into longer conversations. Hikes in the mountains where we talked about everything except our pasts until we were ready. She'd been divorced too, understood the caution, the need to build something on a foundation that wouldn't crack. One evening, about 4 months in, we were at her apartment cooking dinner together. She was telling me about a bridge project that was over budget and behind schedule when she stopped mid-sentence. "Can I ask you something?" "Sure." "Do you trust me?" I looked at her, really looked. At the way she met my eyes directly. At the honesty in her expression. at the patience she'd shown while I worked through my own walls. I'm learning to, I said. That's the truth. She nodded. That's fair. I'm learning to trust you too. We finished cooking dinner. Ate on her balcony watching the city lights. It wasn't passionate or dramatic. It was quiet and real, and that felt right. 2 years after the divorce, I got a message from an unknown number. Just 3 words, I'm sorry, Derek. I knew it was Vanessa without asking. I stared at the message for a long time, thumb hovering over the keyboard. A year ago, I might have responded. Might have asked why now, what changed, whether she really meant it. But I'd moved past needing those answers. I deleted the message without replying. Some chapters close without epilogues. That weekend, Lauren and I drove up to Flagstaff to escape the summer heat. We hiked through pine forests that smelled like Christmas, stopped at a diner that served perfect pie, stayed in a small cabin with a fireplace we didn't need but lit anyway just for the atmosphere. On Sunday morning, sitting on the cabin porch with coffee and watching fog lift off the mountains, Lauren said, "I love you." I turned to her, surprised but not shocked. "I love you too." She smiled. Good. Because I was starting to think I was in this alone. Never alone, I said. We sat there in comfortable silence, her hand in mine, the future stretching out uncertain but no longer frightening. I thought about the man I'd been 3 years ago, driving home from Denver, expecting one thing and finding another. That man would barely recognize me now. Stronger, maybe. More careful. But also more open to the possibility that not every ending was just loss. Some were transformations. My phone buzzed with a text from Marcus. Pictures of the new workbench he'd built by himself, asking if I'd come check his measurements. I sent back a thumbs up and told him I'd be there tomorrow. Lauren looked at the exchange and smiled. "You're a good uncle." "I try." "You're a good man." "I'm working on it," I said. "Every day." And that was true. I was working on it. Building a life piece by piece, board by board, relationship by relationship. Not perfect. Not without scars. But honest. And mine. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out.